stop for a moment, because the trap that was set against you did not land the way they expected. It turned back on the hands that built it, and that is not a small thing. You have been sensing that something shifted before the world had words for it, and this message names that shift. You have felt it in the quiet where your chest tightens and then loosens again when you wake before dawn. You have felt it in the way your phone stays silent while your mind keeps moving through old conversations that no longer fit. You have felt it in the room when the air seems heavier than the furniture, and in the way your shoulders carry a weight you never agreed to carry. You have been trying to act normal inside a season that has already changed its language. You smile, you answer, you keep moving, but some part of you knows that not everything around you is what it claims to be. Even the ordinary sounds of the house can feel sharper now, as if your spirit is hearing what your ears were never meant to catch. That is why this reaches you now, because you are not imagining the tension. You are standing inside a real turning. Stay with me, because what looks like pressure is carrying a hidden reversal. What is happening around you is not random, and it is not empty noise. It is a signal, and the signal is saying that what was meant to close your path is being exposed, while what was meant to preserve you is becoming clear. By the end, you will recognize the pattern that kept circling you, the reason certain doors stayed still, the way a false delay was trying to dress itself as your story, and the quiet protection hidden inside the waiting. You will see why your peace kept returning in fragments even when your circumstances did not, and why your spirit kept refusing to settle into what did not belong to you. You will also hear the difference between a closed road and a guarded road. One empties you. The other keeps you from walking where you were never meant to bleed. Think about a simple room in your day, a kitchen before the kettle starts, a car parked outside while you sit with your hands on the wheel, a bedroom where the light is still low and the silence feels almost alive. That is where these things become visible. Not in attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Dramatic noise, but in the small friction of ordinary life. You reach for the same routine, and it no longer tastes the same. You open a message, and your body already knows the answer before the words finish loading. You hear a name, and something inside you withdraws because the old agreement is gone. That is the kind of holy unrest you have been carrying. It is not chaos, it is recognition. It is the kind of mercy that will not let you sleep through a season that has already ended. You are not careless for feeling this so deeply. You are not dramatic for noticing what others miss. Some listeners around you treat every discomfort as weakness, but yours is becoming discernment. You sense the weight in a room before a sentence is spoken. You notice when a promise is too polished and too empty. You feel the moment a conversation moves from honest to performative. That sensitivity is not a flaw to be fixed. It is responsibility being formed inside you. It means you can no longer live by shallow explanations. It means you were built to recognize when the atmosphere changes, even if nobody announces it. There is a reason you have grown harder to persuade and softer to truth. The same heart that once absorbed too much is learning to separate what is yours from what was pressed onto you. And because you have become more alert, opposition has gotten more subtle. It rarely arrives as something obvious and ugly. More often it comes as distraction that looks harmless, delay that sounds reasonable, pressure that calls itself urgency, or comparison that pretends to be wisdom. You sit down to pray, and 1,000 lesser thoughts compete for your attention. You try to rest, and your mind starts measuring what others seem to have reached. You try to obey, and fear asks for one more day, one more sign, one more explanation. That is how confusion works when it cannot defeat you directly. It does not always attack your faith head-on. Sometimes it just tries to exhaust your focus. Sometimes it keeps you busy enough to forget what you already know. There is a moment in Scripture when Joseph is thrown into a pit and later taken through a chain of events he never controlled. He did not understand the whole road while he was still inside it. He only knew that betrayal did not have the final word. Your life has had that same kind of hidden arithmetic. Something that looked like loss was never allowed to become your ending. The pit did not author your name. The delay did not erase your calling. The false report did not rewrite what God had already seen. That is why this is bigger than one bad day or one harsh season. It is about a preserved purpose moving through conditions that were never powerful enough to cancel it. You are being reminded that the hand that covered you is stronger than the hand that opposed you. If you keep pretending nothing has changed, the cycle keeps asking for the same payment. You begin to normalize inner noise, and then inner noise starts sounding like your personality. You keep saying yes, where your spirit has gone quiet, and the cost becomes harder to name because it arrives in small pieces. You lose sleep without knowing why. You lose peace while still looking functional. You lose the clarity that once came quickly to you, and the delay begins to feel like your fault. That is how repeated cycles harden sensitivity. They do not always break you loudly. Sometimes they wear you down in silence until you stop expecting relief. But you were not made to live under that kind of inner static. You were made to hear clearly enough to move when the moment opens. If even one of these signs has landed inside you, then do not dismiss it as coincidence. If your body has been reacting before your mind can explain, if your peace has been coming and going like a signal in a storm, if the old room feels smaller than it used to, then there is a confirmation here. Type 888 in the comments. That is not a charm, and it is not a game. It is a quiet agreement that you have recognized the turning. Type 888, then come back to me, because the pattern beneath the signs is about to become visible. What has been happening around you is leading inward, and the next layer is the one most people miss. The conflict has never been only outside you. Some battles stand in the room, but the deeper struggle lives in the way you were taught to survive the room. You learned to read the atmosphere before you trusted your own voice. You learned to shrink your needs so other people would not call you difficult. You learned to explain yourself too much because being misunderstood once made you careful. That pattern was not born out of weakness. It was born out of endurance. But endurance can become a cage when it keeps you living by yesterday's protection. The real question is no longer whether you can survive the pressure. The question is whether you will keep obeying the fear that taught you to stay small. The root is not that you are broken. The root is that you have been carrying a survival pattern for so long that it sometimes disguises itself as wisdom. You confuse peace with disappearance. You confuse silence with safety. You confuse delay with surrender, when in truth some delays are only asking you to stop disappearing from your own life. That is the quiet diagnosis of this hour. Something in you learned to wait for permission to be whole. Something in you learned to keep your gifts folded until the room felt safe. But the room never fully becomes safe when fear is the one setting the terms. The healing is not in becoming louder. The healing is in becoming truer. Your mind has been trying to explain what your body already knows. Your body tightens when a path is wrong, but your mind rushes in and says to be reasonable. Your spirit senses a correction, but your thoughts ask for more proof. So you stand between the three and feel divided. On some days you call it anxiety because the feeling is fast and bright and restless. On other days you call it discernment because the feeling is quiet and steady and clear. The difference is not in how strong the sensation is. The difference is in what it produces. Anxiety scatters you and keeps asking for control. Discernment steadies you and keeps asking for truth. You have felt both, and you are learning not to confuse them. The people and places around you matter more than you were taught to admit. Not every room supports what is growing in you. Not every conversation is meant to go where it used to go. Some people love the version of you that stayed predictable and hidden because that version never asked them to adjust. Some environments keep rewarding the part of you that performs while starving the part that is becoming honest. That is why you can leave one place feeling lighter and another place feeling as if your breath has been borrowed. Discernment does not make you suspicious. It makes you attentive. It lets you notice where your spirit expands and where it quietly folds in on itself. The strategy against you has been patient. And that is why it felt so ordinary. It tried to tire you before it could tempt you. It tried to delay you until delay felt natural. It tried to confuse you by flooding the day with lesser urgencies. It tried to plant doubt in the spaces where certainty once lived. It even tried to make you explain away what you knew, because explained truth can be easier to bury than simply known truth. Yet you kept noticing the same friction. You kept returning to the same inner pause. You kept feeling that the answer was not as far away as the resistance made it look. That is not nothing. That is the pattern of opposition losing its certainty. There comes a point when you stop negotiating with what has already been revealed. You stop asking whether the silence means you should keep waiting in the same posture. You stop pretending the drain is just fatigue. You stop calling every closed door a mystery when some of them are only confirmations. That is the threshold. And once you reach it, the old arrangement begins to lose its authority. You do not need to announce your shift to anyone. You only need to stop betraying what has become clear. Something in you has already crossed a line, even if your life is still catching up. Imagine a courtyard with an inner gate that was locked for a long time. The gate was not there to torment you. It was there because the timing had not arrived. Dust gathered near the threshold. The handle cooled under waiting hands. The space around it learned stillness, and that stillness looked like absence to people who did not know the design. But the gate remembered. The gate held its place. The gate did not need to prove anything by opening too early. That is what your life has been like in this season. You have stood near a door that seemed inactive, but inactivity is not the same as abandonment. Some things are sealed so they can survive pressure. Some things are held back so they do not become damaged by premature hands. And what is kept is not always kept from you. Sometimes it is kept for you. You grew used to circling that gate in your mind. You asked whether you missed your chance. You asked whether you should force the issue or leave it alone. But the inner gate was never moved by panic. It responded to the right hour. That is why frustration has felt so familiar around this matter. Frustration appears when the soul keeps reaching for a handle that is not ready to turn. Yet the reaching itself was never wasted. It taught you the shape of the doorway. It taught you that there was more behind the silence than emptiness. You were learning to wait without calling the wait a verdict. The courtyard also remembers the people who stood beside the gate and claimed they knew better. Some wanted you to stop hoping. Some wanted you to call the delay a defeat. Some wanted you to accept a smaller life because a smaller life is easier to manage. but the gate stood between your pace and their pressure. It protected the deeper thing in you from becoming public too soon. You may have called that frustration. Heaven may have been calling it preservation. The difference matters. One name makes you bitter. The other makes you patient enough to remain honest. Now the air around the gate changes. You can feel it before you can explain it. The handle that felt sealed begins to loosen in your awareness. Not because you forced it, and not because you proved yourself, but because the season that held it shut has reached its limit. The dust does not vanish all at once. The old heaviness does not bow in one dramatic second, but something moves. You notice room where there was pressure. You notice breath where there was strain. You notice that the door is not arguing with you anymore. It is beginning to answer. That is how return often starts, quietly, almost invisibly, with the first real space after a long restraint. And here is the part you need to hear carefully. The gate opening does not mean every voice will approve. It does not mean every old expectation will understand. It means the thing that was kept for the right hour is no longer refusing the hour. That is enough. The shift is not measured by applause. It is measured by alignment. You have spent too long trying to persuade closed hands to become open. Now the work is to recognize what is already moving. This is not fantasy. It is the first breath of restoration. Type Eu vejo isso in the comments if this image is landing in the place you cannot ignore. Let the recognition settle where it belongs. Then come back to me. The door is no longer only a memory. It is becoming a passage. Return is asking you to do what fear kept delaying. It is asking you to stand in the room as you are, and not as the version you performed to keep peace. In the morning, before the phone starts asking for your attention, place one hand over your chest and name what is true without arguing with it. Say quietly that you are being returned to what was kept for you, not because you earned it, but because it was preserved. Then notice how your shoulders respond when you stop rehearsing the worst. That small beginning matters. It changes the way the day receives you. You are not entering the day as someone chasing proof. You are entering as someone who has already been marked by peace. That is different. Another practice is gentler but just as necessary. Before you answer what is urgent, pause long enough to ask whether it is actually yours. Some things arrive dressed as duty and leave you emptied. Some conversations beg for immediate response, but your spirit knows the cost before your mouth does. So leave a little space between pressure and reply. Feel the room. Feel your breathing. Ask whether the answer expands truth or merely keeps conflict quiet for another hour. This is not avoidance. It is stewardship. You are learning that not every request deserves instant access to your yes. What is being restored in you is the ability to respond from clarity instead of reflex. When the inner gate begins to open, old patterns try one last time to look essential. They ask whether you are being selfish for choosing peace. They ask whether you are being difficult for refusing to hurry. They ask whether you are over-reading the signs that have followed you for months, but you are not obligated to keep bowing to the language that kept you small. The door does not need your apology to open. The path does not need your panic to appear. Quiet obedience is enough. Quiet obedience is what walks you through what noise could never enter. You are being protected even when protection looks like restraint. The room that no longer fits is not a punishment. It is evidence that you have outgrown an arrangement that once felt necessary. That is why certain exits have been gentler than you expected. That is why some things stopped needing explanation. The closed door, the delayed answer, the paused connection, the strange release from old urgency, all of it may be saying that the cover was never rejection. It was mercy. When you look back, you will see that what felt like lack was also limit, and what felt like limit was also shelter. You were not forgotten inside the waiting. You were being held until your footing was ready. So do not rush to decorate the old room again. Do not force your spirit back into a place that taught you to lower your voice. Walk slowly enough to notice what peace is restoring. Notice the breath that comes easier when you stop defending what is finished. Notice the calm that returns when you stop chasing what was never meant to hold you. This is how you honor the turn. You stop treating every open question as an emergency. You stop treating every delay as a denial. You let the door speak for itself. And if a person or place comes to mind as you hear this, do not dismiss the remembrance. Sometimes a name rises because a pattern is ending there too. Sometimes your own heart recognizes where it no longer belongs. The old covenant with fear has been losing its hold, and the new way of living is quieter than the old one, but far stronger. It does not need to perform. It only needs to remain true. That quiet strength is the sign that the threshold is no longer just standing in front of you. It is opening beneath your feet. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words. Not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Let that gesture be small and sincere, because the smallest honest agreement can still carry weight. Then return to the narration with the same quiet steadiness you brought to the threshold, because the next step is not performance, it is belonging. There is someone in your life who needs this exact message tonight, someone working harder than the people around them and watching the door stay closed, someone whose face just came into your mind as these words were spoken. Send this to them. Not as a recommendation, as a delivery, the same way it reached you, by appointment. You may not know everything they are carrying, but you know the feeling of being held at a gate that seems silent. That is enough to make the sharing true. Before this closes, type the words "You so escolhido" in the comments, not as a wish, not as a hope, as confirmation. What has been forming in you is not a fantasy of worthiness. It is the recognition that you were being named while the door was still shut. Type it slowly and let the words settle into the place where fear used to speak first. Then come back to me, because the story has not been about proving yourself. It has been about recognizing what was already being returned to you. When you look back now, the signs make sense in a way they did not before. The tension in your chest, the silence that felt too loud, the conversations that lost their flavor, the strange resistance around certain paths, all of it was pointing to a deeper boundary. You were not losing your way. You were being shown where your way had already changed. The trap that seemed aimed at you was too small for the purpose over your life, and that is why it turned back on itself. What was supposed to reduce you became the place where discernment sharpened. What was supposed to silence you became the place where truth learned your name. That is why the turn feels so personal. It touched your body before it touched your explanation. You can probably see now that the courtyard, the gate, the dust, the waiting, and the first movement of the handle were never separate images. They were one story of preservation. You were kept, not discarded. You were delayed, not denied. You were covered, not forgotten. The heart of the matter was never whether the gate existed. It was whether you would trust the hour when it began to open. And now you do not need to force what is already shifting. You only need to remain present to the movement that has started. That is the peace that comes after confusion. It is not loud, but it is final enough to change your posture. You are confirmed in the place where doubt tried to speak first. You are remembered in the space where you felt overlooked. You are not late just because the gate took time. You are not abandoned just because silence was part of the design. You are being led back to the place that knew your name before fear taught you to shrink. You are being returned to a door that was never closed against you forever. You are being made steady enough to walk through without bargaining with your own clarity. The same hand that held the courtyard still is now granting you passage, and the passage is gentler than you feared because it was never meant to wound you. Right now, across many places and many quiet rooms, others are hearing the same kind of recognition. Someone is sitting at a table in another time zone and feeling their shoulders loosen. Someone else is standing in a kitchen and realizing they have outgrown a silence that once controlled them. Somewhere another listener is understanding that what looked like a trap became a reversal. You are not alone in that quiet awakening. You are part of a mercy that does not need to announce itself loudly to be real. What is happening in you is larger than one moment and still deeply personal. It is the kind of return that restores dignity without spectacle. Hold that gently. You are not being rushed now. You are being settled. You are not being pushed into performance. You are being invited into truth. You are not asked to explain the whole story before you take the next step. You are asked to trust the one opening that has already become visible. The gate has begun to answer. The courtyard is no longer only waiting. The path is not asking for your fear. It is asking for your willingness. Walk gently. Walk honestly. Walk as one who has already been preserved through the part that was meant to end you. It is sealed. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.